There comes a difficult time in any artist's career when that early period of apprenticeship has been served, when those first successes have been found in early exhibitions, as a reputation starts to be formed. It's at this point when those fundamental questions that any artist has to face, who am I, what am I making, why do I do what I do, have to be answered. For many artists, it's a period where they find themselves at a loss. So it's telling that in this fourth show of Anne Mette Hjortshøj's Pottery, we have not just her largest exhibition to date, not just her busiest in terms of the numbers of people who came, saw her work, have enjoyed and taken pots home, not just her most ambitious in terms of the number of glazes, slips, clay bodies that she's experimented with from her island of Bornholm, but that we really see Anne Mette finding a voice of her own. Most important of all, she has done it without ego, without thinking at all of her career, of her reputation. She has done it purely through a spirit of curiosity, of learning, of embracing all that there is to know, all that is unknown about the place where she lives, the place where she works, and which has informed all that she does in her pottery. I'm delighted to be showing you this fourth exhibition of pots by Anne Mette Hjortshøj. I hope you'll enjoy looking around it with me. The pots in this exhibition are as much a portrait of the island of Bornholm as they are of Anne Mette herself. You'll see throughout this exhibition a palette that is local to the island. It's a palette that's been made from the glazes and slips that Anne Mette has produced, collecting clays from around the island. It's a beautiful range of colours, from these deepest amber colours, from this almost licorice quality in some of the wild clay that's been wood-fired, and deep blues, greys, greens in some of the ash glazing, the salt glazing that's gone on in the kiln.
This is the remains of the old tile factory that this whole huge big area produced tiles from the clay that down here on the whole coastline.
Bornholm has a history of potting that goes back at least 400 years, but really it's much earlier than that, millions of years ago, when the island was first formed as the mainland broke apart and Bornholm became the only site of kaolin in the country. Kaolin, a source clay, a stoneware clay that allows Anne Mette to use some of the low-firing, beautiful, rich red terracotta clays she finds around the island. It's what made the island so attractive to the ceramics factories that set up shop on the island, many of which are now gone. It's also what made the island so attractive to many of the potters that came before her, many of them women, people like Gertrude Vestergaard, whose father set up one of the factories on the island. People like Gutta Eriksson, who had her own long love affair with the beautiful, rich red terracotta on the coast of the island, and who Anne Mette remembers speaking to on the phone, saying, "Have you tried this area? Have you seen the clay here?" In many ways, what Anne Mette is doing with her pottery is retracing those same steps, going back to those wild clay deposits, finding the areas that potters of the past knew about, their knowledge, trying to unearth some of that old traditional knowledge that was found when these factories were first set up, and making use of the beautiful clays in her local environment. You'll see on this shelf here, we've got beautiful slips and glazes that have been used from local materials, but also this beautiful wild clay that's been left with its own voice, unglazed, wood-fired in the kiln. It has this almost silvery sheen over this deep red licorice colour. And then as I turn it inside, there's this beautiful inlaying that Anne Mette has done. So quiet and gentle, almost like fish skeletons at the end of a hearty meal on the island. There is a saying in Denmark that you can only take from nature what you can fit in your hat. Anne Mette joked to me recently that she's had to get a lot more hats recently. As we walk around this exhibition, we'll see the number of different colours and surfaces on these pots, reflective of the number of different glazes, the number of different slips, the number of different clays that Anne Mette has been working with. Layering those combinations is a technical challenge. It's often a nightmare, in fact, combined with the inconsistencies, the complications of a wood-firing kiln. So what you see in this exhibition is not just 3 years worth of making pots and putting them aside, especially for this exhibition. It's the many years prior to that, the building of knowledge of the island, knowledge of the processes, of how to use these materials, a knowledge that is ever expanding and growing. This is in many ways a live project that's ongoing here, that we're seeing in this exhibition. What's equally impressive, I think, in Anne Mette's work is not just that she's been able to harness those many different combinations and to find a voice, a palette, a tone that is consistent in these exhibitions, but when we think also of the number of different pottery traditions she's sort of come from and is working with. She apprenticed 2 decades ago to the late potter Phil Rogers, so of course we have his own Anglo-Oriental Leach School background here in some of these pots, in the way that some of these ash glazes beautifully dribble down the side of these pots. She has, of course, those potters from the island, the local Danish potters that she knows. She has an entirely different school of Danish design, that sleek, cool simplicity, that calm temper that's so well known in Scandinavian aesthetics. And, of course, she has the world of Japanese ceramics influencing her, Korean ceramics influencing her. The Japanese potter Shinsuke Owami, who comes and visits and helps with her wild clay project, collecting clays from around the island. Put all that together, and it's difficult to see how someone can emerge with a voice that's not just informed by all those things, but that transcends them and has its own qualities that can't be pigeonholed into one school or another. But that's what we see in this exhibition. There's one particular example that I think manages to encapsulate all these things, and it's Anne Mette's teapots. They're a beautiful form of her own. They've been developed a long time ago from her oval dishes. They often involve these beautiful handmade stamps, which are a growing collection of motifs that Anne Mette has worked on, which allow glazes to pool in to glass, to form these dark areas, as we have on this teapot. In many ways, it's a very simple form. It harks back to Scandinavian design, Scandinavian aesthetics, of not being showy, of not being brash. But there's so much in a single pot, a single form like that, that tells us how Anne Mette has come from where she began and the voice that she's managed to forge in those years. Anne Mette has said in the past that she likes to make quiet pots. And although that's true of the pieces in this exhibition, they're not timid pots, they're not retiring pieces. I like that she can embrace the severity of these sharp edges in works like these tall, squared and rectangular bottles, or these beautiful flower vases, cubed, the harsh edge letting glaze, in this case salt glaze, peel back from the edge and beautifully contrasted with the flowers that will adorn this pot. Bornholm is in many ways a severe island. It's an island in the middle of the Baltic Sea. And in fact, as you walk down towards the coast, you'll see the seawater cleaving through the island clean, showing the clay that lies beneath the grass. Bornholm is an island that is riven with colour, with pinkish feldspar, with granite, with quartz. And in Anne Mette's pots, there's something of that layering, those colours in sediment that is repeated in the way that she works, in this layering of materials. The severity of the weather comes across in the beautiful surfaces of some of these glazes, some of the brushwork, the way they've been swiped across. But as well as that, there's a little fun, a little whimsy in this show too. You've probably seen in Anne Mette's butter dishes before, in some of her jars, these beautiful handles have been made with these very cute little figurines. We've got goats and unicorns. In this one, where we've got 3 tall, something I've not seen before, it's almost a metaphor for Anne Mette's practice here. This precarious tower of animals that could fall over at any minute, but they're just about keeping it all together. So much of the island is reflected in this show, from the tradition of smoking fish as long held on the island as pottery, which we'll see in some of the motif designs on the pots here. So many of the colours represented in the pieces on show, the surfaces, using crackles, slips and glazes that give some kind of feeling of the great complexity to be discovered just below the surface of the ground on which she walks every day. There is a beautiful line in the first film we made with Anne Mette back in 2012, so over 10 years ago, where Anne Mette says, "There are enough things in this world." And it's a line that shows the kind of recognition, the concern that she has as a potter, producing work, using energy, using materials, that everything she does must have purpose and care and thought and love behind it. And it's reflected in this exhibition. It's reflected in the way that even the smallest pots have that same beautiful layering of materials, that same level of consideration in little cups like these, that gives them a whole universe of colours, textures, from this rather matte surface here, round to the shine on this other side. Every pot, no matter its size, has a kind of worth, a level of intent and care that's been put into it, no matter its shape or its size. This is something Anne Mette discovered working earlier this year for the restaurant Noma, known worldwide as the best restaurant in the world. They recently had a pop-up restaurant in Kyoto, and they asked Anne Mette if she might produce some water beakers for the restaurant. When she made her first batch, exactly like the one she had shown the representatives from the restaurant, they were sent back. They weren't exactly 8 centimetres across, every single one of them. The idea for Anne Mette of making the same thing over and over again, or making the same thing in a kind of mechanical, unthinking, calculated way, is completely alien to the way that she works. There is a kind of organic learning, organic feeling your way towards something in everything that she does. It's embodied in this wild clay project, and it's observable in all of these pots. In the new forms that we're seeing, some of these more sculptural, large vases, and these tiny cups with their beautiful palettes of colour. I was talking not long ago to a professor of ceramics who said that when she first came to her superiors and said, "I'd like to start writing about pottery," the head of her faculty said, "Pottery? Ceramics? Ceramics are to be left in the kitchen and under the bed." It's amazing how far we've come since those comments, how much appreciation there is for the world of craft, how we can start to see potters like Anne Mette Hjortshøj and respect them, celebrate them for the artists that they are. I could stand here and conceptualise and talk about the artistry in what she does, talk about how her square bottles give her a beautiful canvas with which to impress her motifs, how works like this beautiful platter can sit on the wall as much a canvas, a work of art, as it could be a pot laid out on a table. But I think there's something important to be remembered in the fact that the tradition of pottery is far older than we often remember. I don't need to stand here and pontificate about the sculptural qualities of a vase or the canvas-like splendour of a pot for you to know that the kitchen or the bedroom where these pieces come and live in our lives and bring beauty into the rhythm of our everyday is more important than any gallery space, than any museum space. There is something profoundly important about pots that continue that tradition of making beautifully and of thinking lovingly about what is made. And it's so encapsulated in what Anne Mette does. There are so many pots in this exhibition that I couldn't possibly do them justice in this walkthrough, but I hope it's given you a taste of the kind of work that she makes, the kind of beautiful thought and care that she's taken in this exhibition, and how those questions of who she is, what it is that she does and why she does it, are questions that she has embraced and answered in this exhibition. I leave you with the beautiful work in this latest exhibition by Anne Mette Hjortshøj.